The Allocation of Conserved Water program is unique because it allows the landowner to continue to irrigate land while using less water with a more efficient system. It frees up the water that can benefit stream flows, and it can also be used to irrigate dry lands. Throughout this presentation, we will be focusing on irrigation rights. To understand how this program works, we need to know what the term conservation means within this program. Conservation is the reduction of the amount of water diverted to satisfy an existing beneficial use, achieved by improving the technology or method for diverting, transporting, applying, or recovering the water, or by implementing other approved conservation measures. Beneficial use is the use authorized by the water right, for instance, irrigation, nursery, etc. In a nutshell, a conservation measure is the physical change that allows you to satisfy an existing beneficial use with less water. So what are the conservation measures we most likely see? For irrigation rights, there are two broad categories: distribution projects and on-farm efficiency projects. An example of a distribution project is a ditch or canal lining or piping. An example of an on-farm efficiency project is converting from flood irrigation to sprinkler or drip irrigation. The Conserved Water Program is a totally voluntary program that promotes efficient water use while providing for agricultural and community benefits. The program allows the use of conserved water for other purposes: a portion for the applicant to use on other lands, and a portion to the state for an instream water right. So what exactly is conserved water? It is the amount that results from implemented conservation measures. It is the difference between the smaller of the amount stated on the water right, or the maximum amount of water that can be diverted using the existing facilities, and the amount of water needed after implementation of the conservation measures. So what are the direct benefits to the applicant? In the absence of this law, water users would not be entitled to use conserved water to meet new needs. This program provides economic return on conservation investments by allowing conserved water to be used on additional lands and allowing for new uses of water. In areas of limited water availability, this program often provides the only way landowners can apply water to new lands. It provides water for dry land, improves crop yield and quality by giving the plants the right amount of water, reduces field erosion, cuts down on costs by reducing electrical consumption, quantity of fertilizer, and labor costs associated with moving hand lines and managing flood irrigation ditches. The Conserved Water Program can benefit the community in several ways. It provides an opportunity for a boost in the local economy and in creation of jobs. It conserves a scarce resource for future generation. It improves water quality by reducing runoff. And it increases stream flows, which enhance in-stream public uses. This is just a brief description of some of the benefits of the program. So how does this program work? Say you have a 400-acre farm. Your water right allows you 1/40th CFS per acre and a duty of 4 acre-feet per acre with a 1903 priority date. That equals a total of 10 CFS and 1,600 acre-feet per year. You currently flood irrigate your property and then decide to convert to a drip irrigation system, whereby you will only need 1/80th of a CFS and 2 acre-feet per acre. That is a total savings or conservation of 5 CFS and 800 acre-feet. This shows how the calculation works. So you have your original 10 CFS less the 5 CFS needed for irrigating the same lands with the new drip irrigation system, and that equals the 5 CFS of conserved water. So what happens to this water saved through the conservation measures? Generally, 75% goes to the applicant for use on additional lands, and 25% goes to the state for an in-stream water right. There are some variables in the percentage calculation that will be discussed shortly. Utilizing our previous example, here we took the quantity of water conserved and multiplied it by 75% to depict the applicant's portion as 3.75 CFS and 600 acre-feet. As you can see, we calculated the state's portion, 25%, in a like manner. The applicant's portion of conserved water is enough to irrigate an additional 300 acres of land at 1/80th and 2 acre-feet per acre. The state receives an in-stream water right of 1.25 CFS. Both of these rights will carry the original 1903 priority date or the original 1903 priority date plus 1 minute. So now we will talk about the variables in the calculation and how the proportion of conserved water allocated to the applicant and the state can vary. How much water the applicant gets to keep is based on a couple of factors: the amount of non-reimbursable funding received from federal or state governments, and the amount of water, if any, needed to mitigate for harm to other water rights. So let's take the first factor, the amount of non-reimbursable funding received from federal or state governments. To convert to drip irrigation, the estimated project cost is $100,000. The property owner has been working with OWEB, and they are providing a grant of $60,000 for the upgrade. That means that 60% of the project costs are coming from non-reimbursable federal or state funds, which translate to 60% of the conserved water being allocated to the state and 40% being allocated to the applicant. Using the previous example, it means that 3 CFS is allocated to the state for an in-stream water right, and 2 CFS is allocated to the applicant for use on new lands. However, in no event shall the applicant receive less than 25% of the conserved water unless they voluntarily agree to do so. For instance, if OWEB provided 80% of the project costs, the state would receive 75% of the conserved water, and the applicant would receive 25%. Non-reimbursable federal or state funds may encompass funds or grants from NRCS, NIFWF, OWEB, and soil and water conservation districts. The next factor considered when allocating the conserved water is the quantity of water needed to mitigate for injury or harm to other water rights. This is determined by the local water master based on a review of the application and knowledge of the stream and diversion systems. So what is harm? As used in this program, harm addresses the effects of the conservation measures on the ability of another water user to divert or beneficially use water. A couple of examples of harm may include the loss of return flows relied upon by another for their lawful appropriation, a reduction in the quantity of water available to other users reduce the head or amount of water in an irrigation canal and thus deprive a user near the end of the canal of the ability to divert the legal allocation of water, or an alteration to the quality of water available to other users. For example, concentrating pollutants or increasing the salinity or acidity of water available for beneficial use. These are provided as examples of what the water master will be looking at to determine harm. Let's use the prior example where a total of 5 CFS was conserved. In this case, the water master has determined that 1 CFS is needed to mitigate for harm. So we have 5 CFS conserved water less 1 CFS for harm equals 4 CFS of conserved water available for allocation. The state receives 25% or 1 CFS, and the applicant would receive 75% or 3 CFS. Again, this is just an example based on the applicant providing all of the funding. Under the Conserved Water Program, the applicant has the choice of priority date for all of the conserved water. It can be the same as or 1 minute junior to the originating right. Both the state's and the applicant's portion must be the same. So how does the process work? Once the application is received, the department prepares a newspaper notice and receives a quote. The department sends a letter requesting payment of the dollar amount due for publication. Upon receipt of the funds, the notice is published in the department's weekly notice and in the local newspaper once per week for 2 consecutive weeks. A comment period runs for 20 days after the last date of publication in the newspaper. Anyone can comment to the notice. During this time, the department begins its review of the application. After the comment period and review, the department issues a preliminary determination, which starts a 60-day protest period. The preliminary determination is mailed to the applicant and any party that filed a comment. If no protests are filed, then the department issues an order. This order basically says go ahead and begin construction and requires the applicant to notify us of the completion of the project by the date identified in the application. Once the project is complete, then the applicant files a notice of completion. The completion order cancels the original certificate, allows the continued use of water on the original lands at a reduced rate, and provides for the management of all water conserved for in-stream use, both the state's portion and the applicant's portion. Note: the applicant cannot use its portion of the conserved water until the project is finalized. We can't emphasize enough that finalization is different than completion. The completion order also allows for a testing period for up to 5 years. This period will allow the applicant to make sure that the reduced rate on the original lands will work for them. If all is working according to plan, then the applicant requests that the allocation be finalized. The request for finalization refers to who gets what, the state's portion and the applicant's portion of conserved water. This request must be filed within 5 years of the notice of completion. The department issues an order finalizing the project, which issues a certificate for the state's in-stream water right, issues a reduced rate certificate for the original lands, allows the use of the applicant's portion of conserved water, and identifies the area where the conserved water can be used. So who can apply? Generally, any person or group of persons holding a water use subject to transfer. This encompasses certificated and decreed rights and a transfer where a claim of beneficial use has been filed. The application form has been recently modified. As always, we are more than happy to assist in any manner that we can. It is best to submit the application prior to starting the project. However, you may file an application if your conservation measures have been completed within the last 5 years.
The next phase in the allocation of conserved water process that we will discuss is how the applicant's portion of conserved water may be used. Generally, one of the basic rules of Oregon water law is that a water right is appurtenant to the land. However, in the instance of the applicant's portion of conserved water, it only becomes appurtenant to the land upon the sale of the water or gift to an agency, political subdivision, or person. So what does this mean? It allows you greater flexibility to use the conserved water. In the original application, you will have identified a broad area where you propose to use the water. Basically, once the project has been finalized, upon the filing of a notice of use or disposition form and the accompanying map and land use forms, you may use the water provided 1. The lands are located within the area you designated in your application, and 2. You are not expanding the right. The regular transfer rules are still applicable regarding source and injury. Conserved water can be stacked on other water rights. Say you decide to plant a more water-intensive crop in your field. The water right that covers the field is deficient or not enough for the new crop. The applicant can stack the conserved water on that field with the original right so that there is enough water for the new crop. The following year, you decide to put dry land into production. You would simply complete the notice of use and disposition form and provide the map and land use form if applicable. The documents are submitted to the department. If the department has not issued an order within 60 days, the water may be used as proposed. The following year, the applicant may decide to lease the water to his or her neighbor for use on his or her field. Again, the completed form and map, along with a copy of the agreement between the two parties, is submitted. Another year, the conserved water is not needed on farm. You can have the water managed in stream for future out-of-stream use by completing the form. Or you could enter into an agreement with one of the conservation agencies to lease the water in streams. In this instance, an instream lease application would need to be completed. This movement of water is done through the notice of use or disposition form. Currently, there is no fee for submitting this form. A water right for conserved water has the same legal status as any other water right for which a certificate has been issued, and therefore is subject to the forfeiture statutes. We cannot stress enough the importance of completing the 60-day notice of use. The department needs to know where you are using the water. So in essence, the applicant's portion of conserved water does not need to be proved up on, meaning a claim of beneficial use filed, until it is gifted or sold. To move the water around, only a notice of use or disposition form needs to be filed, provided the use is within that broad area identified in the application and it does not enlarge the right. Once the water right is gifted or sold, it becomes appurtenant to the lands of the purchaser and is subject to the layering provisions of ORS 540-510, which means it will be layered with other water rights. And satisfactory proof of the use must be submitted, and a certificate will ultimately be issued. So what happens if you want a certificate issued for your portion of the conserved water before the water right is gifted or sold? Say it's required for bank financing. You request that a certificate be issued and file a claim of beneficial use that shows where you are using the water and how much. The claim of beneficial use must be completed by a certified water right examiner and must have the accompanying map and fee. The certificate issued will have the following. The use of water under this right was perfected under CW XXX. For purposes of future transfers, it is not the intention to permanently layer this water right with any other right existing for the same lands. Therefore, this water right is not subject to the layered water right restrictions contained in ORS 540-510 sub 1. Upon transfer of title to the lands to which this right is appurtenant, this right shall be subject to ORS 537-490 sub 3. To move the water around, a transfer will be required, and the transfer statutes and fees are applicable. For district rights, the following language would be included in the certificate. The use of water under this right was perfected under CW XXX. For the purposes of future transfers, it is not the intention to permanently layer this water right with any other right existing for the same lands. Therefore, this water right is not subject to the layered water right restrictions contained in ORS 540-510 sub 1, provided the holder of this right remains the applicant of record identified in Special Order Volume blank, page blank, the finalization order. This presentation provided a brief overview of the Allocation of Conserved Water program. We believe that this program provides the needed incentives to entice landowners to embrace water conservation. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you should have any questions at 503-986-0881. Thank you for all of your attention and time.